Good afternoon and good morning to those of you out west. Welcome to today's DemoCast from Construction Canada and North American Steel. My name is Tristan. I'm the Associate Editor for Construction Canada, and I'll be moderating today's presentation. Just to start, we'll cover a few housekeeping items before we get going. If you have any questions during today's DemoCast, please enter them using the Q&A section, which you can find at the bottom of your Zoom window. We will address as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. While Zoom does have a raise hand function, since we're going to be keeping everyone's mics muted, please use the Q&A instead. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties during the DemoCast, you can enter a message in the chat, which you'll find next to the Q&A, and we'll do our best to help. Today's DemoCast is being recorded and will be available on the Construction Canada's website by this time next week. Now, I'd like to introduce our speakers. With a background in both structural engineering and project management, Walid Usman has quickly become one of the most knowledgeable and impactful members of the North American Steel family, as well as across the industrial storage industry in Canada. Due to his extensive knowledge and understanding of this industry, Walid has been able to secure some of the largest storage projects in the country and is trusted by some of the largest corporations in North America, including Lowe's, Kubota, and Hershey's, just to name a few. As a member of the North American Steel family for over a decade, Len Savoy manages their dedicated dealer sales team and oversees their partnerships with a vast network of authorized NAS dealers across North America. An experienced industry expert, Len is involved in some of the largest storage projects across Canada. For over a decade, Jonathan Hurst has maintained his role as one of the most prominent and important figures at NAS. With an extensive background in structural engineering, sales, and management, Jonathan now oversees the Western Division of NAS, North American Storage, and as VP and General Manager, as well as VP of NAS's sister company, High Cube Storage Products. In today's DemoCast, Walid, Len, and Jonathan will be discussing the numerous benefits for construction companies to align themselves with an established racking manufacturer and involving their racking partner in the early stages of development. They will discuss the challenges that construction companies often face when building storage facilities and how such a strategic partnership can help them overcome those challenges in order to deliver the most effective and efficient storage solutions that stand the test of time. Walid, Len, and Jonathan, we appreciate you for joining us today. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Tristan and Construction Canada, for giving us an opportunity to present on behalf of North American Steel, our company, and also to discuss the collaboration and benefits for all the industrial partners. So just to highlight a quick agenda, like what exactly we'll be discussing, I'll give a quick tutorial of who are we, who is North American Steel, who we work with, what does the early collaboration means for us in the industry. We'll give a couple of points and highlight them, such as the slab design, what are the parameters that needs to be considered, such as when the building column layout is considered in the design aspect. Also, we'll be highlighting a couple of points in the ceiling heights, the placement of the exits, and the egress plan, along with the dock staging areas. Next slide, Sean. So a brief history about us in North American Steel. You can see one of the charts given on the right side as well. We are proudly Canadian-owned and operated. A manufacturer in Canada. We are one of the largest manufacturing companies here, with a headquarters located in Whitby, providing all the customizable storage solutions, whether that's pallet racking, industrial shelving, platforms, and it goes from the beginning initiation stage to the very end of the implementation as well. I'll highlight a couple of these topics in the next slide as well. Our company was originally incorporated in 1952 under the Steel Equipment of England, which was established in 1898. Since 1972, a current family, Fabricius, has acquired the company. And as a matter of fact, next year, we're actually celebrating our 50th anniversary as well. Recent acquisition of our Calgary distribution center has actually pushed us further in acquiring about more than 400,000 square feet of manufacturing as well as the distribution facilities. that helps us provide all different type of product lines and service our customers present coast to coast, whether they're in Canada or they're in the United States as well. Next slide, sir. So what are the services we offer? Pretty much like everything from the initiation, when the project gets kicked off from the consulting point of view, or whenever a customer even foresees a new project that is coming. We sit down, we gather their needs, what are the requirements, why do they even need a storage system, what type of the racking systems they will be requiring. We'll discuss, we engineer, we custom design and tailor make the system for their specific warehouse. We project manage, as well as the complete installation phases as well, until the inspection is done from the city. We apply all the city permits, everything for them, so that they, in the end of the day, are sitting down and they can be given a turnkey solution towards the completion part of their distribution center. We work with all different type of industries. To name a few, we have listed some of them over here. Most commonly, they're distribution centers, the cold storage, 3PL facilities, as well as the outdoor storage. For the outdoors, you might have seen some of the racking going alongside with the building as well. We term that as structural supported platforms and structural supported racking as well. And many of these industries or these different type of distribution centers do not necessarily employ only one type of racking or the storage platform type of systems. They can sometimes have one, two, or multiple tiered type of systems as well. Again, everything depending on the needs and the requirements of the customer in the end of the day. Most common ones, we have selective and double deep type of systems. We have very narrow aisle, they can deliver. And many of these systems actually not only have a specific requirements from the customer, but also probably will need a particular type of the equipment to use and to efficiently manage up the pallets and the positions as well. All these systems that we design in-house in our design offices are customized. There is no one size fits all approach whenever it comes down to the storage needs. And that's why we are here for, to understand and to work with the customers, with the contractors, with the consultants, everyone day-to-day basis. Next slide, Sean. Who we work with, their chances are you probably have seen our racking or our storage systems probably every day or on a day-to-day basis in either in a retail store location or in a warehouse location. To give you an example, we have been working with Home Depot, with BMW, with Walmart for more than 20 years now already. We, North American Steel, have been very fortunate enough to actually have a very consistent and very loyal customer base. Much of the reasons being the type of the services that we are offering to them, and to be there just for them 24/7 whenever anything is required. We recently have acquired a lot of big multi-million square feet distribution centers, and we are working for them and have been working with them in Alberta as well as in Ontario right now as we're speaking. We have been working for Walmart backroom racking and our exclusive supplier for the Home Depot, all the storage requirements from Canadian East to West Coast on all the stores as well. Next slide, Sean. Very critical. Why is early collaboration required, and who it actually benefits? It's actually a win-win-win situation. Whether it's a customer, it's a contractor, or it's a racking supplier like us. We have to sit down in the very beginning of the stages, and we cannot stress that on anymore. The reason being because if we are not already ahead of the time, in the game plan, and sit down with all the stakeholders that are in the play, we can sit down and we can discuss the requirements of the customer, discuss that, how it actually will impact the building that is being constructed, and how can we tailor make the system, either that's a racking or either that's a storage platform. What will be the location, what will be the size, either they need a 1 level, 2 level, 3, or even multi-tiered platform levels. What are the requirements for them? What type of products are they going to work with? All these basic and small questions actually poses a really big higher risk in the end of the day. So we want to make sure like we are sitting down with all the stakeholders and understanding all their needs ahead of time as well. That's why we always call for early calls. We always call for early initiation of the project phases to understand the requirements and to better implement and so that we can provide an efficient system in the end of the day to the customer. Next slide. And over to you, Len.
Thank you, Waleed. Slab designs. When it comes to slab designs, it's important to consider the different types of product loads you'll be working with in the racking system. These loads get transferred through our uprights down to the slab, which are referred to post loads. Once post loads are determined, you can then design the correct slab thickness for the building. This is generally required for any racking permit applications. In the Greater Toronto area, new slabs are typically on average between 4 to 6 inches, which covers most general applications. But some customers may require additional rebar or thicker slab, depending on the products that they'll be storing in the building. Another solution we can offer when the slab is existing is bearing plates. Sometimes if a customer is moving into an existing building, we may need to introduce a thicker foot plate or even a bearing plate to help distribute the loads on the slab. Next slide, please. Building columns. Building columns are often a racking designer's worst nightmare. They always find a way to be in the way of our racking systems. But 80% of the time, we're designing racking systems around existing buildings, which already have designated building column locations. We then adjust our racking aisles width in the building to try and reduce the loss of pallet positions due to them being in the way. One of the things we really want to try is when customers are paying lots of money for these rack storage systems, we want to make sure that the building columns, such as the one on the left in the picture, are in between 2 racking bays. So if you look further down, you can kind of see the building column in between the rack, which allows you not to lose any pallet positions in the rack, which customers are paying to store. It's important for us to collaborate with both the builder and customers' racking design from the very beginning to ensure optimal racking designs. Next slide, please. Ceiling height is one of the first questions we ask when designing a racking system. We always want to try and maximum our racking system height. Oftentimes, our limiting factors in a building are sprinklers and lighting, but if we start our rack design at the same time of the architect building design, we can avoid these limitations. Real estate is becoming more and more expensive, therefore it's beneficial for us to design the racking as high as we can. A good example of that is cold storage customers. The cost for cold storage customers to run that building and to have those air conditioning units cool the whole warehouse can be quite expensive. So instead of going wider in the footprint, they want to go higher. And of course, we can commit to that with our racking systems, and we can certainly do that. But we need to work with the building and make sure that the building is high enough to accommodate those types of racking systems. At the same time, you want to be careful not to build rack too high, because it may not be beneficial for the customers to operate in their facility efficiently. So it's a fine balance that you really need to have a discussion at the very beginning of the process, like Waleed was saying, and make sure that the height of the system is correct based on what the customer's needs are. Next slide, please. And off to Jonathan.
Thank you, Len. Thank you, Waleed. And thank you for everybody for joining us today. In the past decade, we've seen a significant increase in the amount of municipalities having jurisdiction requiring pallet racking to be permitted. In the past, pallet racking was deemed simply a little more than furniture in the warehouse, and so it didn't really come into affecting the life safety based building designs aspects. And as structural engineers and racking people, we've had to become a lot more in tune with the architectural world and the the life safety side of what we're building into these standing locations, in order to ensure that the base building safety systems are not compromised. When you look at racking, and if you look at some of the pictures that you've seen so far, you can see that these are very tall structures, and even though the pictures show them empty, once they're full, you can't simply just walk through them. You've got to walk around them. It's very much like a demising wall, or should be treated as such. And now that we have to collaborate with architects and with building designers, we need to make sure that when we put the racking in, we do not violate or in any way compromise things like egress distances. Primarily, we see two in our business. I'm sure the more experienced ones out there, architects out there would know possibly others, but generally there's two distance variables that come into play with pallet racking, which we use to analyze the layout plan to make sure that people can exit safely and quickly. Essentially, for the very, very large distribution centers where you've got maybe more than 90 meters across the building, you're probably familiar with placing the perimeter exits within 60 meters, and that eliminates the path, the walking distance limitations to get to those doors. What's less obvious is where those doors are placed do need to maintain line of sight across the building. So if the door is placed between two exterior columns, but possibly in line with an interior column, it creates an issue because that interior column is going to be ultimately buried inside of a racking structure. And so that aisle, that line of sight across the building is essentially compromised or taken away. So we're always trying to work with the designers very early in the process to establish where the rack is going to go, how much space it's going to take up. We don't have unlimited freedom on where that is, because a lot of the time it's driven by the product the client is going to store and the equipment that they use to move it around. It's somewhat Lego-like in that it takes up a certain amount of space, therefore it needs this amount of space to move it. And so we can't just simply shift things over 2 meters this way or 12 feet that way to open up a route to a door. So it's very important that if it is going to be a pallet racking application, that we get involved early. We do some preliminary layouts just to make sure that door placement is going to work in conjunction with your egress plan for the base building. As I mentioned, we do have separate permitting processes. So it does save time and money down the road to not have to change things like door locations or even lighting plans and things like that. The more common egress plan that we fall into for smaller buildings is a 45-meter egress path, which I've shown on this drawing here. One of the things that we're seeing now is that in some of the newer, smaller buildings that are coming up, they'll set up a 45-meter direct line of sight diagonal path from the center of the unit to a door. And of course, when a client comes to put pallet racking in that space, well, now you're into a path that requires, an orthogonal, if you will, or a multi-step distance, a multi-step walking plan. And when the building is built to say, just have doors on either end, and there's no fire rated tunnels down the demising walls in the middle, it becomes a real challenge for a new tenant to put racking in there and still maintain the life safety, egress plans that were part of the base building. So again, keep in mind the end use, and if it is going to be pallet racking, you want to make sure that there's a little bit of leeway to possibly walk to the end of the building and then maybe cut across 10 to 15 meters in order to reach that door within that 45-meter distance plan. Thanks. Next slide. Docking and staging areas are a key part of any warehouse. If you've not had the opportunity to work in warehousing or design warehousing in the past, the dock and the staging areas is the primary entry and exit point for the product that's coming in to be stored and where it's going to be shipped out. And just like when you're at home, if you're coming home with an armload of groceries, you don't walk right into your house, right into the kitchen and put it right into the pet cabinets. Often you're going to stop inside the front door, maybe take off your jacket or your boots, and then move something or take multiple trips, if you will, before you start putting things away. Well, warehouses work in a very similar manner. The material is going to come in, and then the operator is going to figure out what to do with it. It may get sorted. Some may go right out an adjacent door almost immediately, and others have to be put away. And sometimes they're going to be put away for a shift. Sometimes they're put away for months. So that dock and staging area planning is key for the pallet racking design standpoint. But for general use, you were looking at utilizing that space with a clear floor area. So we're looking for that 40 to 45 meter distance, or that clear span between the doors and the first column line. So there's room to lay everything out. And of course, for all the traffic that's going up and down between the doors. One of the areas of opportunity that we see with dock doors is actually storing packaging material and dunnage and empty pallets and things like that up above the doors. And we can do that with racking that stands on the ground, like traditional racking. Some of the larger facilities, especially if it's a very busy warehouse with a lot of material being moved around, they'll work with the rack manufacturer and with the building designer and try and hang or suspend that dock shelving from the building itself. And that is something that would be a conversation they would want to have very early in the process, probably prior to you even getting your base building permit, just so we can understand the loads and the connections and things like that. But as you can see from the photographs, it really does open up the dock area. And in some types of temperature controlled facilities or hygienic facilities where you're dealing with food, it is the only option. And when a client's building a very tall building, it will be a constant reminder for them to look at that unused space above the dock doors and not to have utilized it, which is something that we can do quite easily if we're brought into the process early on. So thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you all for this excellent presentation. We have some time for questions now. Just open the Q&A that's located at the bottom of your Zoom window and post your questions there. And we already have a few coming in, so let's get started. The first question I have here is, how early should a construction company or builder or architect logically introduce a racking company into a new project?
I can answer that, Tristan. I think that's a great question. I think you really have to understand the clients. If the building is being built with the sole purpose of housing palletized material, the pallet racking company or the partner that's involved should be brought in the early planning stages of the building, before finalizing column locations, before finalizing door locations. As I mentioned before, a lot of the pallet racking equipment is very modular in size. So the client's going to have a certain size pallet, and we should really be building out the storage system based on that size, and that will drive things like ideal column center to centers, which ultimately is going to work out to roof structure design. It will drive door locations and things like that, which will tie in with your egress. And ultimately, it can help save time and money down the line for lighting placement and illumination levels. So certainly, if you know it's going to be a pallet racked facility, you want to get in there long prior to going for the base building permit. If it's temperature controlled, it's even more important to start early, because the cost of building that climate controlled area is going to be recouped by the number of pallets they can store. So we'd want to establish that plan very early on, and then we will build things like, condenser placements, lighting, egresses, curbs, things like that around the product storage, so the end user can maximize their return on that constructed space. That was a good question. Thank you.
And Our next question that we have here is, do you have projects or are planning to expand outside of Canada?
I can answer that quickly before Jonathan. It's we do actually have like a lot of projects that we work in, not only in Canada but also in the United States. And as a matter of fact, we are actually currently also in the initial stages of working on a really big distribution center in the Mexico area as well. So like we can expand anywhere in the North American region, especially like if you have any type of warehouses or anything that requires any information. Please feel free to send us out a quick email and we'll be more than happy to assist you in those needs.
Thank you very much. And the next question we have here is, should the height of the racking be so that it does not obstruct the sprinkler system so that you get a proper sprinkler coverage? So in this case, it's a question of what's not necessarily what the customer wants, but what is required.
Yeah, I can answer this one here, Tristan. So when it comes to racking systems, every municipality is slightly different. It's always important to refer to your the fire not department, but the fire regulations to see what is the code. But typically you want to leave between 18 inches to 20 inches clear from the rack, so that you allow the water to penetrate and to do what it's supposed to do above the racking. Sometimes there's even in-rack sprinklers that we have to, depending on commodities of the product and the system, you sometimes have to have in-rack sprinklers, which also need a specific distance away from the product in order for the system to work correctly, alongside with fire baffles to prevent the smoke from dispersing.
Well, thank you. And we have time for another couple of questions here. Someone here asks, would it be possible to receive a PDF copy of that slide deck from today's presentation for reference, as the information on it is very helpful?
That's probably more a question for Construction Canada, but we're absolutely able to provide any type of information you've seen today via our website. We've got some reference material there, or by all means reach out directly and we can provide something very similar to what you've seen today if you have any specific questions.
Okay, and we still have time here. Another question we have is, what information is useful to provide a racking company about a new building to ensure the most effective use of the square footage for storage?
Yep, I'll take that. Thanks so much, Tristan. You might not believe, but we actually need a proper CAD file to begin with. That we cannot stress on that anymore, and with the actual column placements. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because it becomes very critical. Even an inch actually can change the whole scope of where we are actually devising, especially if that's a critical storage platform structure, and if that's a multi-tier, that actually is more critical. The reason why the column placements are very, very important for us to begin with is so that we can also provide the slab engineers with the proper post-load design information, because that is actually going to help them determine how deep or how big the footing is required in their analysis, and they can advise the customers accordingly. In addition to that, the CAD file, we also require clear ceiling heights. And also if there's any limitations, such as from the sprinklers or the lighting people, or if there's any additional considerations that we need to place regarding any products, we also need a list of commodities. What exactly is the customer planning to store, especially if it comes down to a PIC tower or a PIC module platforms. That becomes very critical for us to submit to the city, because the fire consultant, fire marshal, usually they come back asking for a comprehensive list. There are a few commodities, whenever you place them in a PIC tower platform, that limits the height to use the structure till 7 meters, as per the Canadian law from the OBC, what we have over here in Ontario. And similar is a couple of clauses that also deals with the remaining Canada as well. So we want to be smart and help the city out as well, so that they can provide us the permit, and we can ultimately focus on providing the actual installation and construction for the remaining project as well. Along with the commodities, would require slab report. And by slab report, I mean that that contains a couple of design factors, slab values, the soil categories for us to consider in seismic design. Again, that is one of the very critical factors as well, because if the proper slab report is not presented in the beginning and that comes available later on the stage, it might impact the whole design from the beginning. So these couple of things are very critical, and whenever the whole thing we receive as a package from the customer, we usually tend to provide the slab design report from our side that provides them the post loads, the base plates from our side, the anchors location and everything, so that the slab engineer has all the information that is required for him to conduct an analysis and to provide the feedback to the customer.
Okay, thank you. And we have here, how long would it take from design to finish to install a racking system for a typical facility?
A great question, Tristan. It depends on how many systems there is implemented for the customer. On average, it takes about 1 to 2 weeks to generate a system, a plan for the customer, for which in that case, once that is agreed, once a plan is agreed, and we want to proceed into production, depending on the current manufacturer's production timelines, which average between 10 to 15 weeks. We can then move on to the installation process, which again, depending on the size and the scope of the system, can range between 2 weeks long, or it could be even 3 months long installation process. It all depends on how aggressive the customer wants to get the projects completed. We can offer double the installation crew on site to get things done more efficiently and faster, and to get things up and running for the customer.
Okay, thanks to Waleed, Len, and Jonathan, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. That's all the time we have for questions. Just a reminder before everyone leaves, if you'd like to rewatch today's presentation or share it with a colleague, we'll be emailing the link to the recording to everyone who registered for the DemoCast within a week. So keep an eye out on your inbox. Finally, after you shut down Zoom, you'll be taken to a survey to provide feedback on your experience today. Please take a moment to complete the survey, as it helps us to continue to serve your needs in the future. On behalf of Construction Canada and North American Steel, thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.